The sun was beginning to set over Los Angeles, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The city buzzed with its usual energy, cars honking, people rushing to their destinations, and the faint hum of conversations filling the air. Among the crowd, a man walked casually down the street. He wasn't dressed to impress. His jeans were simple, his t-shirt plain, and his sneakers looked like they had seen better days. Around his neck hung a small silver cross, a piece of jewelry that seemed ordinary at first glance but carried deep meaning for him. It was a gift from his late mother, a reminder of her love and faith, something he had worn close to his heart for years. This man was Keanu Reeves, though no one around him seemed to notice. Despite being one of Hollywood's most famous actors, known for blockbuster movies and beloved by millions worldwide, Keanu blended into the crowd effortlessly. There was no entourage following him, no flashy clothes or expensive watches to draw attention. Just a quiet, unassuming figure who moved through life with humility and grace. Today, however, curiosity had led him somewhere unexpected, a high-end Ferrari dealership. Keanu had always been fascinated by cars. Growing up, he dreamed of owning sleek machines that roared with power and speed. As an adult, he indulged in this passion occasionally, driving motorcycles and collecting a few classic vehicles. But today wasn't about buying. It was about exploring. He wanted to see what all the fuss was about when it came to luxury sports cars. So, without much thought, he pushed open the glass doors of the dealership and stepped inside. The showroom gleamed under bright lights. Rows of pristine Ferraris lined the space, each one more stunning than the last. Their glossy finishes reflected the light, making them look almost otherworldly. Salespeople in sharp suits moved between customers, speaking confidently about horsepower, acceleration, and top speeds. Keanu wandered slowly, taking it all in. His hands slid lightly over the smooth curves of a red Ferrari, marveling at the craftsmanship. For a moment he forgot where he was and simply enjoyed the beauty of these engineering marvels. It didn't take long for a salesman to approach him. The man wore a crisp suit, his tie perfectly knotted and his smile wide enough to seem welcoming but not genuine. He sized Keanu up quickly, noting the casual clothes and lack of obvious wealth indicators. In his mind, this customer was nothing more than a window shopper, someone who would gawk at the cars but never actually buy one. Still, politeness demanded he say something. "Good evening," the salesman said smoothly, offering a handshake. "Welcome to our showroom. Is there anything specific you're looking for?" Keanu returned the handshake with a polite nod. "Just browsing," he replied, his voice calm and friendly. "These cars are incredible." The salesman forced another smile, though his tone shifted slightly. "They certainly are," he said, glancing pointedly at Keanu's outfit. "But let me tell you, they don't come cheap. If you're serious about shopping, we can discuss financing options." His words dripped with condescension, implying that Keanu wouldn't be able to afford even the cheapest model in the room. Keanu didn't react visibly. Instead, he kept smiling, choosing not to engage with the insult. He knew how easy it was for people to misjudge him based on appearances. Over the years, he had grown used to being underestimated. It happened everywhere, from restaurants to airports to random encounters on the street. Most of the time, it amused him rather than upset him. This moment was no different. As Keanu continued walking around inspecting the cars, the salesman followed at a distance, clearly annoyed. He muttered under his breath, loud enough for Keanu to hear, "Maybe leave the religious stuff at home next time if you're serious about shopping." The comment was directed at the silver cross hanging around Keanu's neck. To the salesman, it was just another sign of Keanu's supposed irrelevance, someone trying to compensate for their lack of wealth with symbols of faith. For a brief second, Keanu felt a pang of irritation. The cross wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It represented his connection to his family, his values, and his beliefs. Mocking it felt personal, even though Keanu understood the salesman didn't know any better. Still, he refused to let anger cloud his mood. Instead, he turned toward the man and gave him a warm smile. "Thanks for your advice," he said softly. his tone dripping with sarcasm only he could detect. Then, without another word, he moved to a different section of the showroom, leaving the salesman standing awkwardly behind him. Around him, the dealership buzzed with activity. Customers examined cars, salespeople pitched deals, and the sound of laughter echoed off the walls. Yet Keanu felt detached from it all. He watched as the same salesman who had insulted him moments ago greeted another potential buyer with exaggerated enthusiasm. The contrast was striking. Here was a man willing to bend over backward for someone dressed in designer clothes, yet quick to dismiss anyone who didn't fit his idea of success. Keanu shook his head slightly, feeling both amused and disappointed. He had encountered countless individuals like this throughout his life, people so fixated on outward appearances that they failed to see the person beneath. Fame hadn't changed how often he faced such judgments. If anything, it had made them more frequent. Strangers assumed he lived a life of constant glamour and excess, unaware of the simplicity and privacy he cherished. Today's encounter was just another reminder of how shallow some people could be. Despite the unpleasant interaction, Keanu decided to stay a little longer. He wasn't ready to leave just yet. Something about the sleek lines of the Ferraris intrigued him, and he found himself imagining what it would feel like to drive one down an open highway. Maybe someday, he thought, he'd treat himself to one of these machines. Or maybe not. Either way, the experience was worth savoring, even if it came with a side of arrogance and misplaced superiority. As the minutes ticked by, Keanu noticed a well-dressed couple enter the showroom. They looked excited, their eyes scanning the rows of cars with obvious interest. Immediately, several salespeople sprang into action, eager to assist them. The same man who had insulted Keanu earlier rushed over, practically tripping over himself to make a good impression. Watching the scene unfold, Keanu couldn't help but chuckle quietly. He leaned against a nearby pillar, content to observe from afar. Little did anyone know, the real story of the evening was just beginning. The well-dressed couple moved through the showroom with purpose, their eyes lighting up as they examined the Ferraris. They were clearly excited, whispering to each other about engine power, design features, and colors. The salesman who had mocked Keanu earlier was now in full charm mode, his voice smooth and confident as he guided them toward one of the most expensive models. "This is our flagship model," he said proudly, gesturing to a sleek black Ferrari. "It's the epitome of speed and luxury." Keanu stood quietly nearby, pretending to admire another car but secretly watching the interaction. He found it fascinating how quickly the salesman's attitude shifted, depending on who he was talking to. With him, the man had been dismissive and rude. But with this couple, he was all smiles and compliments. It was almost comical, like watching an actor switch roles mid-scene. Still, Keanu didn't hold it against the man. He knew people like this were everywhere, judging others based on clothes, cars, or bank accounts instead of character. As the couple continued browsing, Keanu decided to step closer. He wasn't trying to interfere. He just wanted to listen. Cars were a passion of his, and hearing technical details about these high-performance machines always intrigued him. Plus, there was something oddly satisfying about being so close to someone who had underestimated him moments ago. He leaned casually against a nearby car, arms crossed, looking every bit like a casual observer. To everyone's surprise, including his own, the couple noticed him first. The woman turned her head slightly, catching sight of Keanu's relaxed posture and thoughtful expression. "Excuse me," she said politely, addressing him directly. "Do you know much about these cars? We're trying to decide between a few models, and we could use some advice." Keanu blinked, caught off guard by the question. For a moment he hesitated, unsure whether to respond. After all, he wasn't here to sell anything, nor did he want to overstep. But then he remembered why he loved cars in the first place. The thrill of learning about them, sharing knowledge, and connecting with others over a shared interest. Smiling warmly, he nodded. "Sure, I can help," he said simply. "What do you want to know?" The couple lit up immediately, pulling him into their conversation. They asked questions about horsepower, handling, and even fuel efficiency. Keanu answered each one patiently, explaining things in a way that was easy to understand. He didn't use complicated jargon or try to impress them with big words. Instead, he spoke honestly, drawing from his own experiences with cars and motorcycles. His calm demeanor and clear explanations made him instantly likable. Meanwhile, the salesman watched the scene unfold with growing unease. At first, he thought nothing of it, just another random customer chiming in. But as Keanu continued speaking, the couple grew more engaged, hanging on to his every word. Their initial interest in the salesman's pitch faded, replaced by excitement over what Keanu was saying. It became painfully obvious that they trusted this stranger far more than they trusted the man in the suit. Feeling threatened, the salesman stepped forward, attempting to reclaim control of the situation. "Excuse me, sir," he said sharply, interrupting Keanu mid-sentence. "I think I should handle this." His tone was firm, bordering on rude, but Keanu didn't flinch. Instead, he glanced at the couple, silently asking if they wanted him to stop. When they nodded for him to continue, Keanu gave the salesman a polite smile. "Oh, don't worry," he said lightly. "I'm just helping out." The couple laughed, clearly enjoying the dynamic between the two men. To them, Keanu seemed genuine and knowledgeable, while the salesman came across as pushy and insincere. The contrast was stark, and it didn't take long for them to make up their minds about whom they preferred dealing with. "Actually," the man in the couple said, turning to Keanu, "we'd really appreciate your input. You seem to know what you're talking about." The salesman's face turned red, embarrassment mixing with frustration. He opened his mouth to protest but stopped himself, realizing it would only make things worse. Instead, he stood awkwardly to the side, fuming silently as Keanu took center stage. For the next several minutes, Keanu answered the couple's questions with ease, pointing out key features of different models and offering practical advice. He didn't try to steer them toward the most expensive option. Instead, he focused on finding the best fit for their needs. At one point, the woman asked Keanu what he did for a living. It was a natural question given how knowledgeable he sounded, but it also carried an undertone of curiosity. Keanu hesitated briefly before responding. "I work in entertainment," he said vaguely, brushing off the topic with a small laugh. "But cars are kind of my hobby." The couple nodded, accepting his answer without pressing further. They were too busy soaking in his insights to dwell on his background. By now, the salesman was visibly sweating. He kept glancing at his watch, muttering under his breath and shooting daggers at Keanu whenever the couple wasn't looking. It was clear he had underestimated this unassuming man, and now he was paying the price. Every time he tried to interject, the couple waved him off, preferring to hear Keanu's opinions instead. The power dynamic in the room had shifted completely, and there was nothing the salesman could do about it. Eventually, the couple made their decision. They settled on a stunning red Ferrari, its curves gleaming under the showroom lights. "We'll take this one," the man announced confidently, pointing to the car. Then turning to Keanu, he added with a grin, "But only if you come with us for the test drive." The request caught Keanu off guard, but he couldn't resist the opportunity.
"Why not?"
he replied with a shrug, already heading toward the exit. The salesman scrambled to keep up, grabbing the keys and stammered apologies as he followed them outside. He climbed into the driver's seat, determined to salvage at least part of the experience. Keanu sat in the passenger seat alongside the couple, smiling faintly as the engine roared to life. As they sped down the road, the wind rushing past, Keanu chatted casually with the couple, discussing everything from car performance to movies. Back at the dealership, the salesman grew increasingly desperate. He tried to regain control during the test drive, peppering the group with sales pitches and technical details. But no one paid attention to him. The couple was too busy laughing and chatting with Keanu, who effortlessly commanded their trust and admiration. By the time they returned, the deal was practically sealed, but not because of anything the salesman had done. Instead, the couple insisted that Keanu stay involved throughout the entire process. "You've been so helpful," the woman said, sincerely. "We wouldn't have known what to choose without you." The salesman looked like he might collapse under the weight of his own humiliation. Here he was, a professional in a high-end dealership, being overshadowed by someone who didn't even work there. And worst of all, he still had no idea who Keanu really was. As the paperwork began, Keanu leaned back in his chair, observing the chaos around him. The salesman fumbled with documents, tripped over his words, and shot nervous glances at Keanu, who remained unfazed. Deep down, Keanu felt a mix of amusement and pity for the man. It wasn't personal. He didn't harbor any ill will toward him. But the situation served as a reminder of how often people misjudged others based on appearances. Fame, wealth, and status meant little to Keanu. He valued kindness, authenticity, and connection above all else. Little did the salesman know. The real twist was yet to come. The Ferrari dealership buzzed with nervous energy as the couple finalized their purchase. Papers were spread across the table, pens hovered anxiously, and the salesman scrambled to keep up with the couple's demands. But the real star of the moment wasn't him. It was Keanu Reeves. The Hollywood icon sat casually at the table, his presence calm and unassuming, yet somehow magnetic. He wasn't pushing for anything or trying to take over. He was simply there, helping the couple navigate the process with patience and humor. The couple couldn't stop thanking him. "You've been amazing," the woman said warmly, her eyes lighting up every time Keanu offered a suggestion. "We feel like we're getting a fair deal because of you." Her husband nodded in agreement, adding, "Honestly, I think we'd have walked out empty-handed if it weren't for your advice." Keanu smiled modestly, brushing off their praise. "Just happy to help," he replied, his tone genuine. To him, this was just another human interaction, no different from any other day. But to the couple, and especially to the flustered salesman, Keanu was becoming something of a legend. The salesman, on the other hand, was falling apart. His confidence had crumbled under the weight of Keanu's effortless charm. Every attempt he made to assert himself only seemed to push the couple further away. When he tried to explain warranty options, they turned to Keanu instead. When he suggested add-ons, they asked Keanu's opinion. It was as if the man in the suit had become invisible, while Keanu glowed softly in the spotlight. The irony wasn't lost on anyone, not even the other employees who lingered nearby, watching the spectacle unfold with barely concealed amusement. At one point, the salesman leaned in desperately, hoping to regain some shred of authority. "Sir," he said, addressing Keanu directly, "I really should handle this part. It's my job after all." His voice wavered slightly, caught between frustration and fear. Keanu didn't argue. Instead, he gave the man a polite nod and leaned back in his chair, letting him take over for about 30 seconds. As soon as the salesman started speaking, the couple interrupted. "Actually," the husband said firmly, "we'd rather hear what he has to say." They gestured toward Keanu, leaving the salesman red-faced and speechless. Keanu didn't gloat or rub it in. He simply picked up where he left off, guiding the couple through the remaining details. He explained terms clearly, answered questions without hesitation, and even joked a few times to lighten the mood. The couple laughed along, clearly enjoying themselves. For them, buying a Ferrari wasn't just about the car, it was about the experience. And thanks to Keanu, that experience was turning into something unforgettable. As the paperwork neared completion, the couple turned to Keanu again. "We can't thank you enough," the woman said sincerely. "You've made this whole thing so much easier." Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, "What do you do again? You mentioned entertainment earlier." Keanu hesitated for a moment, wondering how much to reveal. He wasn't one to flaunt his fame, but the situation felt ripe for a little fun. Smiling faintly, he pulled out his phone and opened a photo album filled with pictures of him alongside famous actors, directors, and musicians. "I'm an actor," he said casually, showing the couple a picture of himself with Sandra Bullock at a movie premiere. Their eyes widened in shock. "Wait, are you Keanu Reeves?" the husband stammered, staring at him in disbelief. Keanu chuckled softly. "Yeah, that's me." The couple erupted into laughter, clapping their hands in delight. "No way," the woman exclaimed. "This is insane. We had no idea. She turned to the salesman, who was standing nearby, frozen in place. Do you know who this is? She asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. The salesman shook his head slowly, clearly confused. Should I? He muttered weakly, his face pale. That's when Keanu decided to drop the bombshell. Leaning forward slightly, he looked the salesman straight in the eye and said, Remember when you told me I probably couldn't afford anything here? Or when you insulted my cross? His tone was light, almost teasing, but there was an edge to it. A subtle reminder of the arrogance the man had shown earlier. The room fell silent as everyone processed what was happening. The couple gasped audibly, their jaws dropping as they realized the depth of the irony. The same man who had mocked Keanu was now losing a six-figure sale, all because he hadn't recognized one of the most successful actors in Hollywood. The salesman's face turned beet red. He stammered, fumbling for words as panic set in. Oh, my God, Mr. Reeves, I'm so sorry. I had no idea it was you. Please forgive me. He looked genuinely mortified, his earlier bravado completely gone. Sweat dripped down his forehead as he frantically tried to backtrack. I didn't mean anything by it, I swear. I was just, His voice trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Keanu waved him off with a dismissive gesture. Don't worry about it, he said calmly, his expression softening. It happens all the time. People see how I dress and assume things. No harm done. His words carried a quiet wisdom, a gentle rebuke wrapped in kindness. Still, the message was clear. Judging someone based on appearances could come back to bite you, in this case quite literally. The couple couldn't stop laughing, thoroughly entertained by the turn of events. This is incredible, the husband said, shaking his head in disbelief. You've got to let us take a picture with you before we leave. Keanu obliged, posing for photos and signing autographs with his usual humility. The couple beamed with excitement, thrilled to have stumbled upon such an unexpected brush with celebrity. Meanwhile, the salesman slunk away, utterly defeated. His shoulders sagged under the weight of his humiliation, and his mind raced with thoughts of how this incident might affect his career. Would his boss find out? Would the story go viral online? Either way, he knew he'd learned a valuable lesson, one he wouldn't soon forget. As the couple drove off in their new Ferrari, waving goodbye to Keanu, the showroom slowly returned to normal. Employees went back to their tasks, pretending not to notice the awkward tension lingering in the air. Keanu lingered for a few more minutes, chatting briefly with some of the staff before heading toward the exit. As he stepped outside, the cool evening air greeted him, carrying with it a sense of satisfaction. He had come to the dealership out of curiosity, only to leave having taught a powerful lesson about respect, humility, and the dangers of jumping to conclusions. For Keanu, it was just another day in the life, an ordinary moment turned extraordinary by the simple act of being himself. Keanu stepped out of the Ferrari dealership into the cool Los Angeles evening, the faint hum of traffic filling the air. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a soft purple glow that bathed the city in a quiet calm. He paused for a moment, taking a deep breath as he reflected on what had just happened. To most people, it might have seemed like an amusing story, a famous actor teaching a rude salesman a lesson. But to Keanu, it was more than that. It was a reminder of how often people judged others based on superficial details, and how those judgments could lead to missed opportunities or unnecessary conflict. As he walked down the street, Keanu's thoughts drifted back to the cross around his neck. The small silver pendant gleamed faintly under the streetlights, catching his eye every now and then. It wasn't just jewelry. It symbolized something deeper, his faith, his connection to his late mother, and the values she had instilled in him. When the salesman had mocked it earlier, Keanu hadn't let it bother him. But now thinking about it, he realized how much it represented who he was. Humble, grounded, and uninterested in the trappings of wealth or status. That cross had been with him through life's highs and lows, a constant reminder to stay true to himself no matter where life took him. A few blocks away, the couple who had bought the Ferrari were already speeding down the highway, their new car roaring with power. They laughed and chatted excitedly, still buzzing from the day's events. Can you believe that? The woman said, shaking her head in disbelief. We just met Keanu Reeves at a car dealership of all places. Her husband grinned, gripping the steering wheel tightly as he tested the car's acceleration. And not only did we meet him, but he helped us pick out our dream car, he added. I mean, how crazy is that? Back at the dealership, news of the encounter spread quickly among the employees. Whispers echoed through the showroom as staff members pieced together what had happened. One of the junior salespeople approached the embarrassed salesman cautiously, trying to lighten the mood. Hey man, don't worry about it, he said, with a nervous laugh. At least you didn't insult someone even bigger like Dwayne Johnson or something. The comment drew a weak chuckle from the group gathered nearby, but the salesman remained silent, staring blankly at the floor. He replayed the entire scene in his mind over and over again, each detail cutting deeper than the last. From the moment he dismissed Keanu as just another window shopper to the final blow when Keanu revealed his identity, the salesman felt like he'd been living in a nightmare. What made it worse was knowing that the couple would likely share the story online. Social media moved fast, and within hours, thousands of people could know about his mistake. The thought made his stomach churn. Would this cost him his job, his reputation, or worse, would memes of him start circulating on the internet? Meanwhile, Keanu continued his walk, heading toward a small cafe he often visited. It was tucked away on a quiet corner, far from the glitz and glamour of Hollywood. The barista recognized him immediately and greeted him warmly. The usual? She asked with a smile. Keanu nodded, sliding onto a stool at the counter. As he waited for his coffee, he pulled out his phone and scrolled through social media absent-mindedly. Already, posts about the Ferrari incident were popping up. Someone had snapped a photo of him posing with the couple outside the dealership, and the caption read, "Guess who helped us buy a Ferrari today? Keanu Reeves. Humble icon." Comments flooded in beneath the post, praising Keanu for his kindness and humor while roasting the clueless salesman mercilessly. Fans joked about how Keanu probably saved the couple thousands of dollars by negotiating on their behalf. Others shared similar stories of meeting him in random places and being struck by his humility. Scrolling through the thread, Keanu couldn't help but chuckle. He appreciated the support, but he also knew that fame came with its own set of challenges. People projected so many expectations onto celebrities, forgetting that they were human too. By the time his coffee arrived, Keanu had closed his phone and settled into the peaceful rhythm of the cafe. The atmosphere here was worlds apart from the chaos of the dealership. Soft jazz played in the background, and the scent of freshly baked pastries filled the air. He sipped his drink slowly, letting the warmth seep into him. This was the kind of moment he cherished, quiet, simple, and free from judgment. There were no cameras flashing, no scripts to memorize, and no red carpets to walk. Just a man enjoying a cup of coffee after a long day. His mind wandered back to the couple and their excitement over the Ferrari. Keanu understood why cars like that appealed to people. They were symbols of success, freedom, and adventure. But for him, happiness came from simpler things: spending time with loved ones, riding his motorcycle along winding roads, or sitting alone in a cozy cafe. Material possessions didn't define him, and he doubted they ever would. That mindset was part of what made him relatable to so many people. Fans admired him not just for his talent, but for his authenticity. In an industry obsessed with image, Keanu stood out because he refused to conform. Hours later, back at the dealership, the salesman sat slumped in his chair, staring at his computer screen. A Google alert had just popped up, notifying him that the story of his encounter with Keanu was gaining traction online. Videos of the couple recounting the experience were going viral, and memes mocking him were spreading like wildfire. One particularly brutal tweet read, "When you insult someone's cross and don't realize it belongs to John Wick." The reference to Keanu's iconic role stung, especially since the character was known for exacting vengeance on those who crossed him. The salesman buried his face in his hands, overwhelmed by shame and regret. He replayed his words in his mind. Maybe leave the religious stuff at home next time if you're serious about shopping. How could he have been so careless, so arrogant? He had spent years perfecting his sales pitch, learning how to read people and anticipate their needs. Yet in one careless moment, he had let his biases get the better of him, and lost not just a sale but his dignity in the process. As the night wore on, the dealership emptied out, leaving the salesman alone with his thoughts. He glanced at the clock, realizing it was well past closing time. Normally, he would have left hours ago, eager to escape the fluorescent lights and polished floors. But tonight, he stayed, unable to face the world outside. Every notification that buzzed on his phone felt like another punch to the gut. Friends and colleagues were tagging him in posts, some offering sympathy, others making jokes at his expense. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and the salesman turned off his phone. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling as he tried to make sense of everything. Somewhere deep inside, he knew this experience would change him. It had exposed his flaws, his tendency to judge others, his obsession with appearances, his lack of empathy. Maybe, just maybe, it would teach him to be a better person. After all, mistakes were inevitable, but growth came from learning. Across town, Keanu finished his coffee and stepped back out into the night. The streets were quieter now, the crowds thinning as people returned home. He zipped up his jacket against the chill and started walking again, his footsteps steady and unhurried. Life would go on as usual for him. Another day, another story, another reminder of the power of humility and kindness. And while the world might never fully understand what drove him to stay so grounded, Keanu didn't need validation. For him, it was enough to simply be himself. The night grew darker as Keanu continued his walk through the streets of Los Angeles. The city was quieter now, its usual chaos softened by the late hour. Streetlights cast long shadows on the pavement, and the occasional car passed by, its headlights cutting through the dimness. Keanu moved at his own pace, hands in his pockets, his thoughts drifting like the gentle breeze that rustled the leaves above him. For a man who had just been at the center of an unexpected drama, he seemed remarkably calm. There was no trace of anger or frustration, just a quiet contentment, as if the day's events were merely ripples on the surface of a still pond. As he walked, Keanu reflected on the irony of it all. The salesman's arrogance had been so blatant, so unnecessary, yet instead of feeling resentment, Keanu felt pity for the man. He understood how easy it was to fall into the trap of judging others based on appearances. In fact, Keanu himself had faced similar judgments countless times throughout his life. Strangers often assumed he lived a life of constant luxury and privilege because of his fame. They didn't know about the challenges he had faced, the loss of loved ones, the struggles with grief, or the effort it took to stay grounded in an industry obsessed with image. To them, he was just another celebrity, someone whose life existed behind glossy magazine covers and red carpets. Keanu knew better than most that people were more than what they wore or drove. He valued kindness over wealth, connection over status. That's why moments like the one at the dealership didn't bother him. They were opportunities to remind others of that truth. Sure, the salesman had insulted him, but Keanu saw it as a chance to teach a lesson without saying a word. By staying, humble and helpful, he had shown the couple, and even the salesman himself, that respect wasn't something you earned based on material possessions. It came from how you treated others, regardless of their outward appearance. Back at the dealership, the salesman sat alone in the empty showroom, surrounded by gleaming Ferraris that suddenly felt meaningless. His phone lay face down on the desk, silent after hours of relentless notifications. Social media had done its job, spreading the story far and wide. Memes mocked him, comments ridiculed him, and hashtags trended under his name, or rather, his shame. Friends texted him awkwardly, unsure whether to offer support or join in on the joke. Even his boss had called earlier, asking for an explanation. "We'll talk tomorrow," the boss had said curtly before hanging up, leaving the salesman to stew in his guilt. The weight of it all pressed heavily on him. He replayed every detail of the encounter again and again, each memory sharper and more painful than the last. Maybe leave the religious stuff at home next time. Those words echoed in his mind, mocking him now. What had possessed him to say something so cruel? Had he really been that blind, that dismissive? The cross around Keanu's neck hadn't been some flashy accessory. It had been a symbol of faith, of family, of values deeper than money could buy. And yet, in his haste to judge, the salesman had missed all of that. He glanced around the showroom, taking in the rows of expensive cars. These machines represented dreams for many people: freedom, success, power. But tonight they felt hollow, like trophies devoid of meaning. The salesman realized, perhaps for the first time, that chasing wealth and status wasn't enough. True fulfillment came from treating others with dignity and respect, something he had failed to do earlier that day. He sighed deeply, leaning forward to rest his elbows on his knees. The silence of the room was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of traffic outside. Meanwhile, Keanu arrived at a small park he sometimes visited when he needed space to think. It was tucked away in a residential neighborhood, hidden from the busyness of the main roads. A few lampposts illuminated the area, casting soft light onto the benches and walking paths. Keanu chose a bench near a fountain and sat down, listening to the gentle splash of water. The sound was soothing, a reminder of the simplicity he cherished in life. Here, amidst the quiet beauty of nature, he felt truly at peace. His thoughts turned to the couple who had bought the Ferrari. They had been kind, genuine people, excited about their purchase but also open to advice. Their gratitude had been heartfelt, not performative. Keanu appreciated that about them. Too often, people became consumed by the idea of owning something extravagant, forgetting why they wanted it in the first place. But this couple had seemed different. They weren't buying the car to impress anyone. They were doing it because it brought them joy. And in helping them find the right model, Keanu had shared in that joy, however briefly. Still, he couldn't help but wonder how the story would play out online. Social media had a way of amplifying moments like this, turning them into spectacles for public consumption. Already memes and jokes were circulating, poking fun at the salesman's expense. While Keanu didn't condone cruelty, he understood that humor was part of how people processed such events. What mattered most to him was the underlying message: don't underestimate someone based on how they look. If the story encouraged even one person to rethink their assumptions, then it would have served a greater purpose. Hours later, as dawn began to break, the salesman finally left the dealership. The sky was painted in shades of pink and orange, signaling the start of a new day. Exhausted and emotionally drained, he climbed into his modest sedan and drove home in silence. His apartment was dark and empty, mirroring the emptiness he felt inside. He dropped his keys on the counter and collapsed onto the couch, staring blankly at the ceiling. Sleep eluded him, his mind racing with questions and regrets. What would happen next? Would his boss fire him? Would customers recognize him and refuse to work with him? Or worse, would strangers approach him on the street, pointing and laughing? The uncertainty gnawed at him, keeping him awake long after sunrise. But amid the fear and self-doubt, a small spark of resolve began to form. Maybe this experience could be a turning point, a wake-up call to change the way he interacted with others. Perhaps he could learn to see people differently, focusing less on what they wore and more on who they were. Across town, Keanu woke up refreshed and ready for the day ahead. He didn't dwell on the previous evening's events. Instead, he greeted the morning with the same optimism and humility that defined him. Fame hadn't changed him, and neither had the encounter at the dealership. As he prepared for his daily routine, he reminded himself of the importance of staying true to his values. In a world that often celebrated excess and ego, Keanu chose to celebrate kindness and authenticity, and in doing so he inspired those around him, even those who underestimated him at first glance. By mid-morning, news of the incident had reached far beyond Los Angeles. Fans around the globe praised Keanu for handling the situation with grace and humor. Some shared personal stories of meeting him, highlighting his generosity and humility. Others pointed out the broader lesson of the story: never judge a book by its cover. Meanwhile, the salesman remained largely unseen, retreating from social media and avoiding public spaces. He knew he had a lot of work to do, not just professionally but personally, to rebuild trust and repair his reputation, and so two men on opposite ends of the spectrum found themselves forever linked by a single moment. For Keanu, it was just another chapter in a life marked by humility and humanity. For the salesman, it was a wake-up call, a chance to grow and learn from his mistakes. Both men carried the experience with them, shaping their actions and attitudes in ways they couldn't yet fully understand. Life, as always, moved forward, offering endless opportunities for redemption, and reminders that true worth lies not in what we own, but in how we treat one another. The days that followed the Ferrari dealership incident brought changes for everyone involved, though not all of them were visible at first. For Keanu Reeves, life continued much as it always had, calm, private, and uneventful. He returned to his daily routines, splitting his time between work projects, long motorcycle rides, and quiet moments of reflection. To him, the encounter was just another story in a lifetime filled with interactions both ordinary and extraordinary. Fame had taught him to let these moments pass without dwelling on them, knowing that people would talk whether he wanted them to or not. Still, he couldn't help but notice the ripple effect of what had happened. Social media buzzed with chatter about the incident. Memes featuring Keanu's iconic roles flooded timelines, combining humor with admiration for his humility. Fans joked about how even John Wick wouldn't stand for disrespecting someone's cross, while others praised him for turning an awkward situation into a lesson in kindness. The couple who bought the Ferrari posted updates about their new car, tagging Keanu in photos and thanking him again for his help. Their post went viral, sparking conversations about judging others based on appearances. People shared their own stories of being underestimated or misunderstood, creating a wave of empathy online. For the salesman, however, the aftermath was far less lighthearted. His name didn't appear in any posts. He remained anonymous, but the description of his behavior painted a clear picture. Comment sections lit up with criticism, mocking his arrogance and lack of professionalism. Some defended him, arguing that everyone made mistakes, but the majority sided with Keanu, celebrating his grace under pressure. The negative attention weighed heavily on the salesman, forcing him to confront the consequences of his actions. Each notification felt like a reminder of his failure, not just professionally but personally. At work, things weren't much better. His boss called him into the office the next morning, closing the door behind them before speaking. "This has blown up bigger than we could have imagined," the boss said bluntly, sliding a printed article across the desk. It featured screenshots of social media posts detailing the incident, along with comments calling for accountability. The salesman stared at the paper, his face pale. "What do you want me to say?" he asked quietly, his voice trembling. His boss sighed, rubbing his temples. "I'm not firing you, at least not yet, but this can't happen again. You need to figure out how to fix this." Fixing it wasn't easy. The salesman spent hours drafting apologies, rehearsing explanations, and practicing ways to rebuild trust. He started by reaching out to the couple who had bought the Ferrari, hoping they might offer some forgiveness. To his surprise, they responded kindly, acknowledging that everyone made mistakes. They didn't excuse his behavior, but encouraged him to use the experience as a learning opportunity. Their response gave him a sliver of hope, reminding him that redemption was possible, even if it required effort. Over the following weeks, the salesman began making changes. He paid closer attention to how he interacted with customers, focusing less on their appearance and more on their needs. He listened, actively, asked thoughtful questions, and avoided jumping to conclusions. Slowly, his colleagues noticed the shift. At first, they teased him about channeling Keanu, but over time they saw genuine improvement. Customers responded positively too, leaving reviews that highlighted his newfound professionalism. While the internet hadn't forgotten the incident, the tide of public opinion began to turn slightly as word spread of his efforts to improve. Keanu, meanwhile, remained largely unaware of the impact he'd had on the salesman. He didn't follow social media closely enough to see the backlash or the eventual praise for the man's turnaround. Instead, he focused on living his life with the same humility and authenticity that had earned him so many admirers. Friends occasionally mentioned the viral posts, joking about how even superheroes take down bad guys in real life. Keanu laughed along, brushing off the compliments with his usual modesty. "It's not about me," he often said. "It's about treating people right." One evening, several months after the incident, Keanu found himself back in Los Angeles. He was attending a charity event, one of the rare public appearances he agreed to make. As he mingled with guests, shaking hands and posing for photos, a familiar face caught his eye. It was the salesman from the Ferrari dealership standing nervously near the entrance. Keanu hesitated for a moment before walking over, his expression neutral but curious. "Hey," he said simply, offering a polite smile. The salesman looked startled, his cheeks flushing red. "Mr. Reeves, I didn't expect to see you here," he stammered. Keanu nodded, glancing around briefly before focusing on the man. "How've you been?" he asked casually, his tone warm and non-judgmental. The question threw the salesman off guard. He hadn't anticipated such kindness after everything that had happened. Taking a deep breath, he decided to speak honestly. "To be honest, it's been tough," he admitted. "But I've tried to learn from what happened. I know I messed up, and I'm working hard to do better." Keanu listened intently, nodding, occasionally. When the salesman finished speaking, he extended his hand. "That takes courage," he said sincerely. "Not everyone owns up to their mistakes like that. Keep going. You're doing the right thing." The gesture was simple, but its impact was profound. The salesman felt a weight lift off his shoulders, replaced by a sense of gratitude and determination. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to believe that he could move past the incident. As the night wore on, Keanu returned to enjoying the event, chatting with friends and supporting the cause. The brief conversation with the salesman faded into the background, just another moment in a busy evening. But for the salesman, it marked a turning point. Meeting Keanu again and receiving his encouragement solidified his resolve to change. He left the event feeling hopeful, carrying with him the memory of Keanu's kindness as a guiding light. In the weeks and months that followed, the story of the Ferrari dealership incident became a distant memory for most people. Life moved on, as it always did, bringing new challenges and opportunities. The couple who had bought the Ferrari continued to share updates about their adventures with the car, crediting Keanu for helping them find it. The salesman rebuilt his career, earning respect through hard work and genuine effort. And Keanu? He remained exactly who he had always been, a humble, kind-hearted man who inspired others without ever seeking recognition. The lesson of the story lingered, though, whispered in conversations and shared in reflections. It reminded people that appearances could deceive, that humility carried immense power, and that even the smallest act of kindness could leave a lasting impression. Whether in a high-end showroom or a quiet park bench, the truth remained. True worth wasn't measured in wealth or status, but in how we treated one another. And sometimes, all it took was a single moment to reveal that truth, to teach, to inspire, and to transform.